I had classes that started at 6:30 at Brookline Adult Ed. I'd have to leave Braintree at noontime in order to get to on time. And sometimes I didn't make it. There was usually at least one elevator that was not working. I missed a bus because somebody would pass by. There are a number of reasons why it took 6 hours to get from Braintree to Brookline. But I was hard-headed enough to keep trying.
Welcome to another episode of Spilling the Tea, where we dive deep into the latest developments and stories surrounding the MBTA. Today, we're honored to have Joanne Daniels-Finegold as our guest. Joanne has been a pivotal advocate for accessibility and was instrumental in the landmark Daniels-Finegold Settlement Agreement of 2006, on which she was a named plaintiff, and which has had a significant impact to the accessibility landscape for the MBTA. We'll explore her journey, the progress made, and the challenges that still lie ahead in making public transportation more inclusive for everyone. Joanne, thank you so much for being willing to join us here today.
Oh, no problem.
Can you tell us about your journey and what motivated you to become an advocate for accessibility?
Back when I was at Cape Cod Hospital in 1997, I was told by my ex-husband, I don't want to live with you anymore. That left me with nowhere to go when it was time for me to be discharged from the respiratory hospital in Braintree. I went in walking and I came out using a wheelchair. I ended up in a nursing home in Braintree that was not medically necessary for me. I had passed all my you're ready to go home tests. So here I was stuck in a nursing home that I really didn't belong in. What I was doing to try to get along with my life is I started with classes in medical office technology. One of the things I needed in order to get to class was bus. And I lived on a route that was a non-accessible route. In order to get an accessible bus on that route, you had to call ahead a day in advance, similar to what you have to do with the ride. Sometimes the bus you would get would be coming in the wrong direction. Two of the inspectors at the Quincy bus garage took me under their wings. Paul Malone and Dee Janess are awesome people. They're my heroes in this. Paul told me, if you need a bus that's accessible, call the garage so you'll get the bus going in the right direction. So this is a great thing.
Yeah.
I had access to bus, but there were issues on the T at that point. Even if a bus was supposed to be an accessible bus, there were lifts back then, not ramps, didn't always work. There were times when I would get on a bus and couldn't get off a bus. I'd have to ride the bus to the end of the line and come back to my stop, and bus maintenance would meet us there and get me out of the bus. Then I needed to have access to train. Only problem with train is that the platform at Braintree is upstairs. It's accessible by elevator only if the elevator's working. There were times when the elevators weren't working. This became even more of a problem later when I was taking classes in Brookline. Braintree to Brookline is not around the corner. I had classes that started at 6:30 at Brookline Adult Ed. I'd have to leave Braintree at noontime in order to get to on time. And sometimes I didn't make it. There was usually at least one elevator that was not working. I missed a bus because somebody would pass by. There are a number of reasons why it took 6 hours to get from Braintree to Brookline. But I was hard-headed enough to keep trying, to keep taking classes there also. It was gratifying to be able to do something besides sit in the nursing home.
Yeah.
I was asked by one of the lawyers from Greater Boston Legal Services who was involved with the T case if I ever had problems riding on the T. When I finished laughing after the lawyer gave me his card and asked me about difficulties riding on the T, I said, yes, I do have problems riding on the T. We discussed things and I became involved in the T accessibility case. That was back in 2003. The accessibility case was settled in 2006. after much work on the part of the lawyers as well as the plaintiffs, named plaintiff group. We met frequently. All of us had our own assignments. I had an office at GBLS for many months, during which I went through hard copies of documents from the MBTA, where I would pull out information that would help us prove our case. Some of this information I would find in the quarterly reports that were sent to the FTA. They were 15 inches thick, and they were to ask to be excused from being in compliance with the ADA. So they put a lot of energy into quarterly reports that were, as I said, 15 inches thick to go to the FTA. Now, here's the thing. It wasn't just the quarterly reports. I would find other documents in these quarterly reports that helped us prove our case. So I had to go through every single page.
So you were very involved then.
We were all hands-on. I did research on bus securements. One of the things I proved was that driver attitudes were a barrier to transportation. And that's not something you can put your finger on. It's not something that's quantifiable. But I got information from the World Bank, from a transportation system in London, and from Kinetics Transit that showed that driver attitudes were a barrier to transportation for people with disabilities. And that I was proud of. About half of the named plaintiff group had full-time jobs. So we're talking people who have to set aside their lives to come to meetings so that we could prove our case, get things done. Our lawyers, they were our representation, but they weren't the people who were advocates. They weren't the people who needed the advocacy.
For those who are unaware, the Americans with Disabilities Act passes in 1990. And here we are in the 2000s,
right?
And this is still the case. Very understandably motivated, very well researched, and with a group of supporters facing the same issues as yourself. And the judge rules in your favor.
In our favor.
What did that mean?
For one thing, it didn't mean that we got money. That money was set up to give to the T to start improving infrastructure. Those of us who were named plaintiffs were aware that money that should have gone to the T's infrastructure and repairs and replacement of materials had been given to the Big Dig to finish that out. So it kind of made things impossible for the T.
And what were some of the pieces of that agreement? What did that require the MBTA to do?
There were over 200 issues that were single issues that they were required to perform, not the least of which were getting rid of the old bus fleet and getting accessible buses. That was one of the first things pretty much that was done. The bus fleet was made 100% accessible. But there again, just as with the lifts, they needed to be maintained. It required the T to do what were called circle checks every day before the buses went out of the garages to make sure that all the accessibility features were working. That included, beyond the ramps on the buses, the visual crawl, the letters going across on the inside of the bus, as well as the audio message from the bus, were part of the accessibility features of the bus. A lot of people seem to have an idea that accessibility equals mobility disability, and that's not true. That's not true at all. And there are people who do have mobility disabilities who are not obvious. They're non-obvious disabilities. Somebody who has, say, spinal stenosis might not be able to lift their foot high enough to get up on this first step of the bus. They need the ramp. You also don't need a driver saying to them, "You don't look disabled." That's one of the other things that changed. There was distinct training with regard to dealing with the passengers on your bus or train. Things that you could not say anymore, things that were none of your business. It's like you can't say, "Well, what's your disability?" The way people were treated was different. We had to hold the drivers to be accountable for not being a barrier to transportation by their words and their actions. So beyond that, what else did the settlement agreement do? It created the Department of System-Wide Accessibility, just to make sure that everything was accessible, that things were being done so that no one was inconvenienced. It also created the job of the independent monitor. Our independent monitor is Judge Patrick King. He is the person who has biannual meetings where the T expresses what they've done to have gone through more of the requirements of what they were supposed to get done, and where the plaintiffs say, you've done a good job or you've done some good things here, but they're falling down here. It's a balance sheet of what's gone on since the last meeting. Judge King is independent. He gets to hear from the T, hear from the plaintiffs, and make a decision as far as any claims that either party makes. Sometimes things are partially done, sometimes things are barely touched, and sometimes they're completely done. And we as plaintiffs and our lawyers go over things and decide where we stand. If we make a claim with regard to disagreeing with what the T has put forth as something that they've done in a positive way toward getting a particular item done, then we say why. It's not just we say we don't agree. We have to say why we don't agree. That happens twice a year. I speak on behalf of the plaintiffs at both. And Laura Brailsford speaks on behalf of the T. Also, the amended settlement agreement. Why was there an amended settlement agreement? Because there were certain requirements that were in the original settlement agreement that were completed. The bus fleet had been changed. There were a number of things that were done. So what we did was we, along with the T, agreed on a certain number of items on the settlement agreement that were completed. Some that needed to be set aside and looked at further.
So once the settlement agreement passes, obviously it's not a light switch. Things don't change immediately overnight. There are requirements that are underway. And you mentioned there was a need for an amendment in 2018. What have you seen as far as changes? What is the felt impact of this agreement looking back? How has your journey as a rider changed?
It's like a 180 turnaround. Just having accessible buses, that alone. At the time, there were only 5 accessible Green Line stations, but all the other lines didn't have all accessible stations. The Red Line, Charles MGH, has a hospital. It was not accessible. There were a number of other Red Line stations that weren't accessible. The most recent one that was made accessible is Wollaston, and it's in an area that it really kind of needs to be. There was a $67 million grant given by the federal government that, along with $14 million from the MBTA, will make some of the street-level stations on the Green Line on the C and B branches accessible. And it's going to be wonderful. So those have all made a huge difference in people's lives.
What other areas do you see as still needing to grow for improvement to make the system more accessible?
For one, there was a marketing campaign this last year that was meant to show people where the T is accessible, where the accessibility features are on the T, but it didn't quite get there. It's like still, when I'm using a bridge plate, which I'm having to do more often because there are more gaps on the system, that's another thing, gaps between a train and a platform that make it impossible to get in or out of trains in certain stations. People are like, oh, how do you get to use that? Who gets that for you? And it's like one of those things where, yeah, they get to see somebody use it, but they don't know how to make a request. People don't know they exist. So I'm thinking about the marketing campaign. I don't think they actually showed a bridge plate being used. The ramps on the buses, the ramps on the Green Line, but no bridge plates. There are accessibility features on the T that people don't know about. They need to know about these things. That's extremely important. More people would be using the T, I believe, if they knew that they could do this, if they knew where there are elevators, knew how to find out if an elevator was broken down. Most places that had elevators to begin with have been upgraded to have additional elevators. So if one is down, it doesn't mean that you can't go.
Lose the whole station.
Yeah.
Well, I know, not to completely give it away, but I do know that System-Wide Accessibility is working on an educational campaign to address exactly that. and I've been working with them on it. So that's how I know it's in
You're
motion.
spilling the tea.
I'm spilling the tea. But that will be in motion in the coming months, just because, as you said, there are these barriers, and we see it all across the MBTA, where if someone doesn't know how to do something, that fear and trepidation prevents them from even wanting to try, or it prevents them from using something that is maybe available to them. So that's why we need to improve on the educational piece. You mentioned elevators, though.
Mhm.
And I know, obviously, we get reports every day as to, which elevators are in and out of service. And I was wondering, what have you seen as far as elevators? Obviously, I know there's been hotlines made. There's been other more innovative uses of technology to monitor them. But how big of an impact is that to you as a rider? And have you seen improvement on that front specifically?
For the most part, when elevators are down, they're primarily down for maintenance now. The most recent elevator outage I ran into was at Braintree Station. I wasn't aware that the elevator was going to be out. I checked on the website, on the T's website, and there was a message saying that the Braintree elevator would be out for maintenance, and I didn't see anybody there working on it. There was nobody who could tell me, oh yeah, this is out for maintenance. There was also a message there saying that there would be shuttle buses. I did call somebody I knew who was in system-wide accessibility. Dad, this is not happening right now. I'm here. There's no shuttle buses. The person who is the red shirt who is at the station to guide people is unaware of any shuttle buses supposing to be here. And I'm going to wait for the next bus to take me to Quincy Center. So I'm on the phone with somebody back here in Boston as far as what's going on and the fact that people are told online that there's going to be shuttle buses and there are none. Got to Quincy. I'm going to find out from a bus inspector there that he wasn't aware that they were supposed to have shuttle buses. And this is the kind of thing that something fell through, but somebody actually wrote this up and put it in the website somehow without checking or making sure that things were in place. That's the kind of stuff that really can't be allowed to happen. You're talking about an elevator. It's a key to accessibility. If it's going to be out and you're going to have a shuttle bus taking its place, that's fine. Where's the shuttle bus? Make sure it's there. Make sure that that garage knows that they're supposed to have buses out. But if that kind of thing happens to me and I call, what happens to people who don't have a number to call?
Yeah. And who might not be as well versed in the system to even know what alternative options were. You have that length of experience taking the T, so you knew what you could do, but others might get to that point, hit that wall, and that's it. Their
some
journey
things
ends.
that bother me to this day. There's certain announcements that happen when you're coming into a station. When you're on the red line going to Downtown Crossing, the announcement's made that you can transfer to the orange line. If you're a wheelchair user, you can only transfer to the orange line going toward Oak Grove at Downtown Crossing. If there was a second announcement saying that if you go to Park Street, if you go to the next station, you can get to the orange line going to Forest Hills. But this doesn't happen. It's a problem.
It is. And it's something that seems quite addressable.
Yeah. So just make sure that you're saying the right thing so people can make a change as far as their way to go.
I mean, even that, it shows that the MBTA needs to be cognizant of not just the accessibility in the traditional sense of its messaging, but also being mindful of its audiences and how the message might be different for different audiences.
Well, for me, it's cringeworthy because I hear it every time I'm going.
Yeah. And it's a slap because it's not true for you.
Right. So there's that kind of thing. The number 222-3200. And the thing is that is the main number of the T.
Yep.
It's the number everybody's given. It's the entrance into a wormhole that you might not find your way out of. It's not easy. You can get into some blind extensions that aren't being answered anymore, phones that don't exist anymore. It's not a good way of getting information. I think most people who use 3200 know this. It just needs to be redone. This is not really accessible.
That's honest feedback. That is something I also know is undergoing a fairly significant change, the entire call center, and being done so with accessibility in mind. So I will hope that there will be an improvement for that, and I will internally advocate to make sure those considerations are made. But, in the moment, that is your lived reality. And unfortunately, you're not alone. So it's definitely areas that the MBTA needs to be mindful of. So kind of going backwards, but just because I'm personally interested, how important would you say is the community engagement component for transit advocacy? How are you soliciting feedback? How are you organizing, or how did you organize and continue to organize other individuals who were encountering the same issues with the MBTA to get this agreement underway? And then once the agreement was agreed upon, how do you continue to help hold the MBTA accountable? And as things progress, as new technologies arise, how do you use that community engagement to drive for further improvements, maybe even beyond the amended agreement?
Well, RTAG was invented, the Riders Transportation Access Group. They've been working with the named plaintiff group with regard to articles that need to be completed by the T to be substantially in compliance with the settlement agreement. What we do, named plaintiffs as well as RTAG, is we have meetings. We also have meetings with people from system-wide accessibility and from customer engagement in order to nail down certain specific issues that have come up or do come up, or projects that have come up. We've worked with engineering. We've worked with other departments with regard to forward-facing projects that would affect passengers.
Are there some specific improvements or victories that you could point to that came from those conversations with customer and employee experience, with operations, with the engineering individuals? Maybe recommendations that you or our tag might have made that are now out on the system?
Well, the Type 10 cars on the Green Line, we were consulted with regard to the making of the cars. They were basically plywood cutouts, and we went out to Riverside Station and examined them, the size of the doors, that sort of thing, to see if they would be a better fit for the Green Line than what was already there. And they were.
That's great.
We worked with engineering again. There was a fleet of buses that they were getting. I think they were from Connecticut, but they had a chance to make some changes, some physical changes on the bus. And we were called into Ken Park Plaza to check out a bus to see how the front of the bus, getting into the bus, how it would work with different wheelchairs. I participated in a red line emergency drill. There were other emergency drills that have been done that other people who are part of our groups have participated in, which gives the T and any other participants in the drills an idea of how things would go. That's the kind of behind the scenes thing that happened here to make sure things are going to work well. Community engagement is important in maintaining what we have so far as far as accessibility is concerned, but also going forward. We've got the mobility center. People don't even know this stuff exists. Travel training exists. It's not just for people who are low vision or blind. It's for people who really need to know how to function in the streets, how to function getting on and off of trains, buses.
We've been working, my team, the digital strategy and engagement team. We've been trying to find the lesser known pieces of the MBTA that are hugely beneficial, but maybe don't necessarily get the spotlight quite as much as, larger capital pieces or things of that nature. So I'll be sure to send over a link so that you can take a look. But it is exactly that, highlighting that this exists, showing you what kind of services are available and the people who do it. Do you see that the MBTA is going in a positive direction under its own volition with regards to accessibility, where it is making accessible decisions, obviously in partnership with groups like RTAG, but it actually has it.
We still exist.
And obviously yourselves as well. But do you think that it is going in the right direction and is doing so honestly, I'd say?
I think the T is going in the right direction. I think they are doing this of their own volition. They want to be a better agency. They want to be doing the right thing with the public. This isn't something that the feds are pushing. I think the feds are more pushing safety. And safety is a great part of what we have to deal with the T on. So everybody's involved and is safety-minded. But as far as an agency itself, as far as it being a group of people who's providing a service to the public, yes, they're into this. They're 100% into doing the right thing.
That's good to hear from an external perspective, because I obviously have a very different lived experience and a different perspective working at the MBTA. But, I look at things like diversions and the amount of thought that goes into where to place shuttle stops to make sure that they are accessible, make sure that the bricks aren't out of alignment or something of that nature. And it is, from my experience and my perspective, great to see those considerations taken, where it could very easily say, there's a low floor bus, check mark, we did it. There is that extra level of making sure that people take the time to consider these things. Reflecting on your advocacy journey, what have been the most rewarding and challenging aspects of working toward improved accessibility?
It's really rewarding when people actually thank you, people who actually appreciate that somebody stepped up. And it's not just me. All of us stepped up. And, it took a lot of our life. It took a lot of our time. It took a lot of our energy. And it was worth it, When the announcement was being made of the $67 million for the Green Line, I look at this as a responsibility. When I signed the settlement agreement, I said, this is going to tie me to the T for the rest of my life. I signed on to, and I have no regrets. If there is ever a time that I can't do this anymore, okay, fine. But as of right now, I think I'm doing okay.
What advice would you give to other advocates who are working to improve accessibility in their own communities? So this could be in Boston, beyond, other transit systems.
Don't give up, first of all. Look for people who support you. Look for people who need support. Form a community of those people who need support and who can support, and go forward with that. Don't let people make fun of you. Don't let people deride you. Do the right thing and just keep going. Be stubborn. Be super stubborn.
Joanne, thank you so much for being on Spilling the Tea. Without question, you have left an indelible mark on the MBTA.
I'm not done yet.
As we wrap up this enlightened episode of Spilling the Tea, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Joanne Daniels-Finegold for joining us and shedding light on the crucial strides taken toward ensuring equitable transit for all. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Your engagement fuels our commitment to exploring critical topics that impact our transit system. Remember to subscribe to Spilling the Tea on your favorite podcast platforms and join us next time for more behind-the-scenes insights into the MBTA. We love hearing from you, so if you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, don't hesitate to reach out at social@mbta.com. Stay tuned for more episodes as we continue to bring you stories and discussions that matter to our community. I'm Andrew Cassidy, and this has been Spilling the Tea.